Want a website with unmatched power, speed, and control? Try Bluehost Cloud, the new web hosting plan from Bluehost, built for WordPress creators by WordPress experts. With 100% uptime, incredible load times, and 24/7 WordPress priority support, your sites will be lightning fast with global reach. And with Bluehost Cloud, your sites can handle surges in traffic no matter how big. Plus, you automatically get daily backups and world-class security. Get started now at Bluehost.com.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
You are now entering the Pseudo Archaeology Podcast, a show that uncovers what's fact, what's fake, and what's fun in the crazy world of pseudo archaeology. Hello and welcome to the Pseudo Archaeology Podcast, episode 147. And tonight we are talking about the Dendera light. Is it a light bulb from ancient Egypt? No, it's not a light bulb, but we're going to spend a really long time talking about if it is or not, just at the very end to be like, oh wait, it's not. So, hey y'all, it is nice to be back. I am recording with a new mic, so who knows? Who knows if this sounds terrible or if it sounds like pretty good? I don't know. It's more expensive than my old mic, my old trusty mic, which was actually, if we're honest, a total piece of crap that I just kept going for way too long. My old mic still does work. And I'm sure we'll be in a museum someday, sitting there in a huge museum piece on me, because I'm a very important person. So I can't throw it away. I can't throw anything away because, I used it. So speaking of me as a very important person, before we get into our topic of the day, the Dendera light, or it might be Dendera light. I think it's Dendera. I got to say, in my personal life, for the first time, friends, like 2 weeks ago, I went to New York City. New York City, man. First time. I really liked it. I know that some people like it, some people don't like it, but it really spoke to me. I really enjoyed my time there. I do have to tell you that I experienced a total of three, count them, three canceled flights on my way to and from Los Angeles to New York City. I had one flight canceled on the way there, and I was there for a day to do a TV show. Again, speaking of my awesomeness and my place in the historical record, in the archaeological record, let's be honest, it's where I belong. I had this one day TV shoot thing, and I was trying to get there the day before. I was supposed to, but then my flight got canceled and I got stranded in Denver. The flight got canceled because the plane was broken, and we figured that out when we were at 8,000 feet. So we had to turn around, and I stayed all night at Denver. So I got to the film shoot at the very last minute. Every cliche had this. I was super tired. I wanted to do my best too, because they were super cool. The people who I was working with, just great people. But I was like, damn it, I got like total bags under my eyes and stuff. I'm like, just trying to do my best, but airlines, dude. But then on the way back, I do my thing. I spend the night in New York, which I cruised around New York. I loved it. On the way back, I get to the airport. We get in our plane. Our plane's grounded, goes back to the terminal. About an hour later, we go out again on the tarmac. We sit out there for hours, go back again. Our flight is totally canceled. This is JetBlue. JetBlue is the worst airline ever. I will never, ever, ever, ever give them a cent for anything. They were awful. Awful. Do not take JetBlue. Ever. Ever. They are terrible. So we got canceled. They gave us no choice in terms of, oh, there's another flight, though, tomorrow or in 3 days. No, just never. You're just screwed. I was shocked. It is the worst airline experience I've ever had. And they had this total asshole come talk to us, this cog in the machine idiot who just kept telling us to go on the website, which was down, or to call in, which that was just a recording and went nowhere. So there were people with kids, stranded, nothing. It was shocking. So anyway, my flight got canceled. And then I was able to get actually a flight on another airline, which got canceled as well. So that's, if we're counting, friends, up to 3 cancellations. And then the final one, I finally got a flight home. So like 2 days later. So anyway, I just had to rant. I have this public forum here, and I had to become angry about awful, horrendous JetBlue. I hate JetBlue more than any other pseudo archaeology situation we've ever dealt with on this show. That's how bad. But enough about me. So what are we doing today with the Dendera Lite with my new mic that may or might not be working? Who knows? Maybe I'm talking to no one right now. Hopefully this is working. Okay, you guys, this is an old school classic. And I'll leave a link probably just to the Wikipedia site on this. Because it's really straightforward. It's really good. There's a couple other places we can go. A couple other links I might put down, but this is the one. A lot of you have probably seen this. It's a famous panel from the Temple of Hathor in Dendera, right? This is in Egypt, of course. And on the temple wall, there's this image, and there's actually like 4 of these. So, but there's the one most famous one, which looks like a guy holding a huge light bulb, right? And this most famous of these, now this light bulb imagery is used in other places, but it's like, you got the big 4 at Dendera. You basically have, if you look at the panel, there's a big guy on the left, and he's holding this big ass, like, light bulb looking thing. And it looks like, and the light bulb kind of goes across, right, from left to right. And then it looks like the light bulb is plugged into some sort of socket, and that there's like a wire coming out of the socket. And then if we really want to, go nuts, there's some other people there, some smaller people. And then there's this other like pillar thing holding it up. And you're like, oh, and it looks kind of like some sort of, I don't know, electrical Nikolai Tesla thing. If you're using the whole idea of early 20th century electrical stuff, right? That's the sort of look if you're putting that in your brain. Now, is this an actual image of a light bulb? Well, how can I break this to you? No, not at all. Not even close. Right. It's one of those classic. This happens in pseudo archaeology so much. This is but it looks like one, and it's like, it's just not. And it has nothing to do with electricity or the light bulbs or anything like that. It's something that was actually made up kind of later 20th century. And it's one of those things, if you look at it and somebody says, hey, look, the light bulb, your brain immediately like tries to make it a light bulb. But it's not. A little backstory on this, because the backstory is kind of interesting. This image is at the Temple of Hathor at Dendera. There's actually a whole kind of temple complex there. This is not famous places in Egypt, right? This is not in Valley of the Kings. This is not like on Giza. This isn't in like Luxor, none of that, right? Dendera is a completely different place further down on the Nile. Now, this temple, there's obviously been archaeological expeditions focused on the Temple of Dendera. And they have little bits and bobs where some constructions can date back as maybe even as far as the end of the Old Kingdom. And they have some stuff from the Middle Kingdom. But really, when you say Temple of Hathor at Dendera, this construction is very much Greek period, right? This is Ptolemaic kind of stuff. So it's very late, right? So I think sometimes we might forget this when we're looking at the Temple of Hathor. This is thousands of years newer than the pyramids, right? We have to think that the pyramids were built sometime around, let's say 2500 BC, right? And then King Tut and everything is, maybe 1300 BC, right? Valley of the Kings and all that. This is right around the time of Christ, maybe slightly before, is it 50 BC? It's in that range. So this is so much newer. And as we look at this, we do have to realize that although Egyptian history overall is amazing in how little over time it changes. And I'm not saying it's not dynamic and interesting and all that kind of stuff, but it's pretty stable for really long periods of time, right? There are some changes. So if we're comparing what you find at the Temple of Hathor to something that you find at Giza or something, this is thousands of years newer, right? And we also have to realize that this is during, again, Greek Egypt, the Ptolemaic times. This is after Alexander the Great comes, So this Egyptian culture is infused with Greek ideology. And even, this is so late, that there's even going to be some Roman stuff, but pushing in here too. So just the history of the temple itself is like just really interesting, right? And the Temple of Hathor is known for all kinds of other things. The silly Dendera light thing is just a little tiny piece of really the cool parts, and there's so much there that's just fun to look at and talk about. And in fact, there's so much that you're going to have to wait for the next segment for me to talk about it. Yeah, deal with it. Hello and welcome back to the Pseudo Archaeology Podcast, episode 147. And we have been discussing the Dendera light, though not really, because we haven't even really gotten to the Dendera light yet. We're still on the Temple of Hathor. And when I last left, 30 seconds ago, remember that time? Things were different then. A lot of changes. I was saying, the Temple of Hathor itself has so much cool stuff. One of the many things that Temple of Hathor at Dendera is famous for is that it actually has a carving of Cleopatra on it, right? Cleopatra was so late in Egyptian history. In terms of time, we're looking at, she dies in 30 BC, right? So it's actually a bit rare that we have images of Cleopatra. If you don't, know too much about Egypt, but you're interested, you think that Cleopatra is like everywhere or something because she's this famous figure, but it's not. We don't really have too much of anything. It's a couple handful of stylized stuff. But this is one spot where we have kind of a stylized image of her, and this is her, I believe, with a stylized image of Caesar. I can't remember if Caesar's on there or not, but this is during the time with Caesar where they have a child, Caesarion, right, who's gonna be Ptolemy the 15th, although it never really works out. Know your history, friends. It all kind of falls apart there in the end there. Kind of a bummer for Egypt. But they have, images of this child, Caesarion, Ptolemy the 15th, on the Temple of Hathor, which is that's awesome. Just an awesome, really interesting moment in history. You also have on the ceiling of the temple, you have an image of the zodiac. Right? The zodiac as we know it, with the zodiac signs as we know them. Isn't that cool? Right? The early depiction of, are you a Taurus or are you a Pisces? Right? That kind of stuff. I don't know. I love this one. I love the Temple of Hathor. I just find it's such an interesting time in Egyptian history. And it's like we don't have most buildings in Egypt, when you're looking at them, you're not seeing this period of stuff, and stuff where you have Egypt, and then you have the Greek flavorings, and even the beginnings of like the Roman flavorings to it too. It's really, really cool. But you're not here to listen to me wax philosophic about how cool I think the Temple of Hathor is. No. You're here for the Dendera light. Why? Okay, look, here we go. What is the image of the Dendera light actually? Well, let's take it one piece at a time. I think the most important thing to talk about is the bulb thing itself, right? That's the main part of the image. Oh, so you say it's a bulb. It's not. What it is, So in the middle, if you look at what would be the filament of the bulb, that's a snake, right? And it's an obvious snake. It's obviously a snake and not a filament. You can see it's like wiggly. It's got a snake head. It's got a tail that ends in a point. Like, it's an obvious snake. So, but first, what is that snake? Okay, it's not a filament. They say it's an image of the god Harsumptus. And by they say, what do I mean by they say? Well, and I'll touch on this in a moment. There's writing on this panel. Yes, the Egyptians are telling us what it is, right? They don't say it's a light bulb. There's text here telling you what the image is. I mean, that's it, right? It's over. But what I think is interesting is so the snake image is of Harsumptus. And when I heard that term, the name Harsumptus, I was like, what? I teach Egyptology, right? And I'm not an Egyptologist, but I am like the world's most interested like armchair archaeologist. And I love talking about Egypt because it's actually a thing that I don't have personal experience in. I chat all the time about the ancient Maya, and that's stuff where I've worked in the ancient Maya world for many, many summers, right? On actual digs. I've done the whole thing, and I just know that stuff in my bones. Egypt is something that I just love talking about and love learning about as an outsider, But with that, I've learned a lot about it. Again, I teach Egyptology and I really enjoy it. And when I saw the name Harsumptus, I'm like, I've never heard this name. Like, how could I not hear a god name? I should know this. And I looked a little deeper, and it's just another name for Horus. And I'm guessing that it's just very late. Again, remember that this pyramid is built so late. This is Greek Egypt times, right? So it's just Horus, and Horus is the hawk-headed god, right? Horus is symbolic of the living pharaoh. Horus is like the main character in Egyptian mythology. He is like the Jesus figure, right? The main hero that you follow in the mythology. So this is huge. This is the main guy. What I thought was interesting was that Horus is being depicted as a snake. I hadn't seen that before. That's new to me. And I'm like, is this a late version that they just never even did this in like the New Kingdom, in the times of like King Tut? Like maybe this is just a later aspect of it, but it's definitely him because again, the Egyptians say it's him. They're like, this is him. So I know that with 100%, proof positive that this is Harsumptus, which I think is just a later aspect of Horus in the form of a snake. Now, what's he in? He's inside what this thing that they, does vaguely look like a bulb. It's a lotus flower. It's so the lotus flower also has a ton of symbolism in ancient Egypt, as does the snake. Funnily enough, both of them have imagery that goes with Lower Egypt, which is near to the Delta and this kind of thing. I don't know if they're going for that in this image, but it's just interesting. Anyway, when you look closer, you can really tell that it's like a lotus flower. The part that they say is like the socket is obviously the lower part of a flower. Like it's carved, it looks like a flower. And then as the flower curves around the like stem of the flower, what they make it is a barge. It's actually a boat. It's like a very stylized boat. So what you have, the actual image is a snake inside a very stylized lotus flower. And the lotus flower, as the stem goes around, they make it into the image of a boat, a very simple boat. I've seen this kind of very simple boat imagery a lot, whether it be in Egypt, and actually even the Maya do this sometimes too. I am not saying there's any relationship between Egypt and the Maya, but you have these simplified images. And how do I know that it's a stylized boat or barge? Because they write it down, because they tell us. And then there's one or two other people in the image who are kind of on the barge as well. And then you have this other thing holding up the light bulb in some of the images. And what that is, it's the thing that will refer to as like, oh, it's a insulator or some sort of electric, again, Nikolai Tesla thing. What is it really? It's the Jed pillar. And I'm not sure if it's pronounced Dejed or just Jed. I'm going to go with just Jed. It has a D in them. The Jed pillar is symbolic of stability, right? It's symbolic of stability. And that makes sense because actually in Egyptian belief, stability was a big deal. It has to do with like, you don't want the Nile to go too high or too low. So what is this stable thing? It actually relates to the god Osiris and is also seen as a stylized backbone of the god Osiris, which I just think is great, right? You have the stylized backbone imagery, adding the idea of stability to this overall image. And I keep referring again to the writing, right? The actual hieroglyphics on this image. I thought I would read to you a chunk of this. Now, there's other chunks on some of the other images that have the snake in the lotus flower motif on them. But here's the main chunk. I'll just go through it. And then we can talk a little bit about what this maybe means. And I'm quoting straight out of the Wikipedia page that I'll link. I've heard this quote before too, so I know this is pretty good. Here we go. Speaking the words of Harsumptus, the great god, who dwells in Dendera, who emerges out of the lotus flower as a living Ba, whose completeness is elevated by the Kamatju images of his Ka, whose Seshemu image is revered by the crew of the day barge, whose body is carried by the Jed pillar. Underneath his Seshemu image is the primal, and whose majesty is carried by the companions of his Ka. Phew. Well, that's a lot. Now, some of these terms, it's a little too much. Like we could spend half an hour going through this, but you can see it's sort of talking about this great god Horus, who at this point is at Dendera, and they talk about his Ba and Ka kind of coming out of the lotus flower, or how great it is. Both the Ba and the Ka are aspects of the soul, right? That's what we kind of care about there when you hear that. The Ka is sort of just your overall life force that just kind of stays with you while you're alive, and when you're dead, it just kind of stays in the tomb. Sometimes your life force is seen as animal related. That's the Ka. The Ba is more of your soul, right? It's your personality. It's yourself. And the Ba is kind of what exists beyond and travels outside, right? Once you're dead. There are other aspects of the Egyptian soul too. The Egyptians went way down deep with different, parts of the soul and what the soul is. For us, we just kind of think of the one thing, right? Like just sort of the personality, but the Egyptians had a whole bunch. So they talk about that though in the hieroglyphics, right? That this great god is here, and this aspects of his soul are here. And isn't that great? And guess what? His body is supported by this, super strong Jed pillar. And he's also carried by this barge, which would be, of course, like down the Nile. So it's just this little paragraph of just kind of interesting Egyptian mythology, right? That goes with this little scene. And the other scenes have that too. They have explanations about, okay, Harsumptus does this, Harsumptus does that, right? Otherwise known as Horus. So when you have the quote there, and in archaeology, that's so rare and so awesome when you actually have not only a carved image, a really finely carved image, you also have the words of the people there telling you what it is. You're good to go, right? The whole light bulb thing is just a waste of time. Let's be honest. And speaking of wastes of time, let's come back for the final bits and bobs of the Dendera light.
This message comes from our sponsor, Teladoc Health. There are lots of reasons for wanting to be healthy. Family, work, living a fuller life. Teladoc Health understands. Whether you have diabetes, high blood pressure, or just need to manage your weight, Teladoc Health can help. Visit teladochealth.com/what's your why for more information. That's TELADOC health/what's your why.
Hello, and welcome back to the Pseudo Archaeology Podcast, episode 147, and we are wrapping up the Dendera Light. And as always, well, there just ain't that much to it, and it's pretty straightforward what it actually is. So there's a couple other things that like pseudo archaeologists say when they're trying to support the stupid light bulb. I hate even just call it like a hypothesis because it's not even that good. I don't want to call it hypothesis. Let's just call it stupid idea. The Dendera stupid idea. They say like, but in that room, there's a lack of soot on the ceiling, which means they weren't burning wood to see at night in there or to just have light. Instead, they were using electricity. No, they weren't. So there's a couple things there in terms of, how much soot would be on the walls or on the ceiling, burning, having a torch of some kind to see at night. First, maybe they didn't even go in that room that much, so you wouldn't have that much soot on the walls. But let's say they did. Second, you don't need to burn wood to have light. And actually in ancient Egypt, a place where wood is always hard to come by. That's one of the things they're always trading in. So wood's going to be a premium, right? As soon as you get wood, you're not going to use it to burn. That would be one of the last things you would do with it. Instead, why not use oil? They would have oil lamps, and we know this because guess what? We find oil lamps. And they're very simple. They're these very simple, just ceramic lamps. You just put a little oil in there and you light it and it gives you a little flame on the end. Oil lamps, no soot. They burn very clean, right? So there's that is easily debunked idea there. Other arguments you have with this, oh God, friends, I know you're here to really scrape the bottom of the barrel because you oddly like doing this, as I do. I guess we're all together in this. Just as always, we're here sitting at the very bottom of this barrel. And when we're at the bottom of the barrel, we also find the Baghdad battery. This comes up in tandem with this. The Baghdad battery is not from Egypt. It's from, Mesopotamia. And they conflate these because, hey, you need some electricity for your light. Why not use the Baghdad battery? You'll never guess what I'm going to talk about in my next episode. That's right. We're doing the Baghdad battery, friends, because we have to. So next time, Baghdad battery. They hook it up in this silliness that has nothing to do with nothing, because it's from a completely different part of the world, completely different time. It's just a waste of time. If we also want to waste more of our precious resources and brain cells on debunking this, you can also say stuff like, okay, if the Egyptians actually had light bulbs, where's the evidence of all the broken light bulbs? We should find broken glass that was once used for light bulbs. We should find a light bulb factory of some kind or some sort of workshop where you're making them. We should find sockets for the bulbs, right? The bulbs might be broken and gone, but shouldn't all these rooms have sockets in them where you put the bulbs in? Where are they? We have never found a single one of those, right? We've never found broken bulbs. We've never found sockets, and we've never found any kind of factory or workshop where you make this stuff. So, there you go. Again, what else? It's so funny, sometimes when I do some of these themes, like it just came to me. This one, I can't remember what made me think about it, but I think maybe it was on my list, but I was like, dude, I got to do the Dendera Light. But I sometimes immediately worry. I'm like, what am I going to say? Besides the 3-minute, like, it's this, but it's actually this. They say this, but it's actually this. I do always seem to make it to the end of the show. I guess I have the gift of gab, but I do worry sometimes, just because it's so thin and so obvious. And ultimately, it's such a bummer. I'm so again, for the thousandth time, I just have to say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But you know what? In this destruction of bummerness, there is a phoenix that rises from the ashes, friends. And you know what that phoenix is? It's this. I want a dendrolite. So I went online and I've been searching. I want to buy a dendrolite, right? I've only found one so far on like Etsy, and it was like super expensive. It was like $400 or something. But there's got to be somewhere where people are popping out like $19 dendrolites. You know what I mean? I want one where I can plug into the wall and it's like a little thing to sit on your desk and you just screw a light bulb in and you just like turn it on. I would love that, right? And it has the guy holding up the bulb and that's where the socket is. You screw it in and it just takes like regular bulbs. That's my genius. If I had some sort of, if I had like Patreon accounts and like all that other stuff, if I had swag, a dendrolite. You guys, I am not kidding. I would have it on my office desk. Like I'd buy 2 of them. So, man, if anybody knows where to buy one of these cheap, like, do get in touch with me. I would love to have one, my own dendrolite. And of course, if you've seen this, for the true moronic aspects of these, they'll recreate them with Baghdad batteries behind them, right? Like powering the dendrolite. I need it all. I need a Baghdad Bower. I can't even say it. I need a Baghdad battery powered dendrolite. I'm sorry. I'm laughing at my own jokes. I'm a loser. I'm the world's worst host, but like, it's a small need, but it's mine. Okay. And with that, you know what's coming. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening to the Pseudo Archaeology podcast. Please like and subscribe wherever you like and subscribe. And if you have questions for me, Dr. Andrew Kinkella, feel free to reach out using the links below or go to my YouTube channel, Kinkella Teaches Archaeology. See you guys next time.
This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Culturo Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Rachel Roden.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.